This is Counterpoint, and I'm your host, Tanya Granic Allen. We're back with our current events panel, and we've got some explosive headlines to unpack. We'll discuss the Canadian military's expansion and crackdown on prayer and religious expression in official settings. We'll discuss the extraordinary case of a Canadian Nato intern accused of spying for China. We'll examine the fierce ethical debate over proposals that would allow organ donation to be integrated into the MAID process. What does that mean? We'll talk about that. And we'll wrap things up with the opening of the Gordie Howe International Bridge and the growing controversy over whether Prime Minister Mark Carney gave away too much in negotiations with the United States. So lots to get through, and joining me now are political commentators Brock Stephenson and Aaron Vey. Thank you both, Aaron, Brock, for joining me. Crazy headlines. Why don't we start with the spy? So, Brock, what's going on? Did we groom a Canadian spy and send one to NATO? What happened?
I don't know if we groom our spies in-house or if we bring them in from abroad. Belgian prosecutors found a Canadian national of Chinese origin who is working at NATO's Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, which is the military headquarters for NATO in Belgium. This suspect is a woman who I believe is in her 30s, despite being an intern. She's worked for StatsCan. She's worked elsewhere in the Canadian government and is being accused of spying for China. So we're sort of getting a black mark against us as the Canadian contribution at NATO, having someone who's leaking NATO information to China who isn't a member of NATO, as we all know.
Yeah, and that's it's really quite shocking because we already know that like the Five Eyes alliance want to like say forget Canada. They're too much of a threat internally with what's going on. They can't manage their espionage situations properly, and so now this seems to add credibility to that claim that we're too close. And again, this is spies. Good spies do their job well, right? You won't know they're spies, and this could clearly she hoodwinked a lot of people here if she's in fact guilty. But Aaron, is this more case and proof that we're not skeptical enough when we're dealing with the Chinese?
Well, this Chinese national, Katina Zhang, she should have been stopped by our own security measures before the embarrassment of her being stopped by NATO, because she's been here for obviously many years and placing herself in positions of extensive federal access. So for her to have not been stopped and caught here and now is a security breach. It is good news that the NATO Commission did discover her committing espionage, although it's not yet officially public information. What happens on our end, we have a broader problem with the Chinese Communist Party, not just sending in students and interns and individuals working in engineering and doing espionage, but also a broader asset takeover. You think of, for example, Diamond Aircraft in the city of London. It's owned by the Chinese, which have great ties to the Chinese Communist Party, and we have evidence of even training communist pilots over here in China, or over here in Canada, and also in South Africa with retired RCAF officers. So there's a broader initiative of the Chinese Communist Party. This is just one little string that has been unfurled. Think of in January early this year when those 4 Chinese national students were caught with firearms and explosives at the engineering department at Western University. So we have a huge problem in our hands. And the problem is if we address this as a Chinese problem, it comes off as racist. However, we have to address it as a Chinese Communist Party problem, because there are many, and I would say the majority of Chinese people here are happy to be part of the country, but there's definitely an espionage threat, as there was in the Cold War with the Soviet Union.
No, absolutely. Like there are many Chinese here on our Canadian soil who are now Canadians or maybe PRs who are freedom loving, democracy loving, wonderful citizens we're happy to have. But how does the government tackle this, Brock? Again, a good spy does their job well. How do you nip it in the bud?
I think we need to be more careful. The federal minister said we need to get to the bottom of this. I hope they do quickly and report publicly on what their actions are on how to reduce espionage within Canadian government employees and our partner organizations like NATO. China isn't our only problem. We've had espionage problems from other countries around the world that see us as a vulnerable and easy to penetrate country. And we're going to only see more of this as the years progress, unless Canada steps up and figures out a way to deal with all these espionage threats.
Okay, we're going to be right back. Welcome back to Counterpoint. Joining me now for our current events panel is Brock Stephenson and Aaron Vey. Aaron, let's start with you on this next topic. So the Canadian military seems to be on this path, well, they are on a path to restricting religious activities within the military. And the latest is an expansion really overseeing and banning certain prayers in certain settings. Could you explain what this latest expansion means for the Canadian military, especially for the chaplains, and how it will impact Canadians?
Yeah, this is an outcome or even a national tragedy of the spiritual state of our nation and a complete failure to recognize our spiritual and religious past. It's a disservice, of course, to past chaplains, present chaplains, and just the majority of Canadian history, where prayer is a very common right or respectful ordinance in public gatherings, and especially carried out by chaplains that are well vetted and have good intention. This comes from the Canadian Armed Forces Personnel Instructions Manual, and they have switched from allowing chaplains to offer prayer in public settings, such as a Remembrance Day service or a commissioning service, and instead they are now ordered to offer spiritual reflections. And of course, this reflection is a statement about hope or looking to the future, some positive, whimsical platitude, perhaps. But it puts chaplains in a charter dilemma because it is effectively saying, we do not recognize your freedom to express a basic prayer, at the very least, in the name of God, or however that chaplain wishes to pray in his or her freedom. So this is a serious issue. And what is the pain of it all is that they cite the charter as saying that because we are not allowing a prayer under this religious identity of God or transcendence, basically we're respecting everyone's diversity. But it's actually quite opposite, because if you look at the
Yeah,
manual
it's the
carefully and
opposite.
scroll down, to section 4.5, it gives a blank check or a broad a gateway for Indigenous cultural practices, or otherwise known as religious practices that Indigenous and First Nations are allowed to perform at these public gatherings and ceremonies with the military unfettered. And so a simple prayer compared to, let's say, a smudging ceremony, these are theological things that are worth discussing. I'm actually glad this has been brought into the public spotlight, because oftentimes chaplains and people in the Canadian Forces have been sidelined in the media. So this is actually good. I think this will work together for good, despite it being a terrible situation. But we have to be careful here. By banning the word God, we have to understand our charter opens with the preamble, whereas Canada
Right.
is founded upon the principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. So we're just throwing that out completely. And I believe it's going to be challenged in the courts, and hopefully chaplains get their way in the future.
Yeah, I mean, again, speaking on the patrimony or the heritage of this nation, I mean, our motto for the country is ad mare usque ad mare usque ad mare, is taken, I think, from the New Testament. So it's kind of interwoven in our history and our foundation of the country. But let's change gears on this to this point, Brock. How does something like this impact military personnel? Okay, obviously chaplains, I mean, I would be demoralized if I were a military chaplain and I was being handcuffed, because this is sort of what that is, figuratively. But how does this impact the personnel of the military and the boots on the ground?
I think they're trying to enforce freedom from religion over freedom of religion. You don't have to go see the chaplain. It's a choice. The chaplain is there to provide spiritual guidance of whatever your faith is. And our military has a strong, strong tradition of military and religion interwoven. The Commonwealth War Graves Commission has Christian crosses, Stars of David's on the graves of our soldiers who fought in the First and Second World Wars, as part of a very diverse, multi-faith composition of Commonwealth forces. Excluding religion from the military is wrong. letting people have the option of opting out, that's fine, but banning it outright is a major problem. And without any grounding or guidance, the military is just a volunteer or just a corp of people that are there to do tasks rather than who believe in a cause and the values that Canada was founded upon.
So we only have about 30 seconds. Aaron, is this just the continual trend towards secularization that we're witnessing in this nation?
Yeah, definitely. And this needs to take us back to our history because victories against, foes in the past were always started and commissioned with prayers to God for help. And so removing that puts us in an uncharted territory of essentially thinking we have a moral high ground without the higher power behind us to back it. So it's going to have some setbacks, and it definitely degrades troop morale, and it will not make us effective in combat if we're not at least evoking the name of God for success for our troops.
Okay, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Counterpoint, where I'm joined by panelists Brock Stephenson and Aaron as we unpack a plethora of headlines that are very controversial. This one, no less, death by organ donation. What on earth does that mean? Well, the New England Journal of Medicine has published, while most places around the world seem to be poo-pooing Canada for allowing such expansive euthanasia and MAID regime, this journal is suggesting that we can capitalize on the situation of all the MAID deaths and potentially have harvest organs from these folks. Okay, I didn't see this coming, Aaron. Usually I can predict certain things. I didn't see this coming. Explain to me what the heck is going on here.
Yeah, so once Canada legalized medical assistance in dying, we opened Pandora's box to a lot of ethical issues, and this is one of those subsequent ethics that is being addressed in the public square. When someone dies, we have death donor rule, which is allowing the body to thereby be harvested for organs, obviously based on the prior consent and will of the deceased. Now, what's happening is because we have medical assistance in dying, scientists and doctors are saying, well, if we can harvest the organs while the individual is still alive with the intent to die and with the final outcome of being death, we can save those organs and therefore save other lives with these organs. So it's a utilitarian perspective. This extreme danger is, of course, someone being alive with an organ being harvested. So it's grotesque. It's evoking images from the movie The Island with Ewan McGregor, where they're harvesting people that are alive. And of course, it's a big no-no. We don't do that in this country. So God forbid somebody is not properly sedated with the intent to be euthanized, and they have an organ removed and they are experiencing it, and it botches the whole thing, and it becomes a legal horror situation. So definitely it needs to be shut and clamped down, and hopefully nothing like this ever comes into the public reality.
Now, Brock, let's turn to you. The journal was very clear that in order to have these organs harvested, that the person would actually not be dead yet, that the person would have to be like heavily sedated and unconscious. And I know, Aaron, we touched upon this. Obviously, somebody could potentially wake up if they're not sedated enough or conscious enough. But there's actually the big elephant in the room, which is, so we will be harvesting organs from someone who's not yet dead. Does that not bring in some ethical dilemmas or some concerns? Should people be concerned?
There should be concern. Kidneys and livers can be transplanted from living patients and are all the time. The real issue is addressing the shortage of people who are registered as organ donors, addressing the issues of is there actually a shortage with all the fentanyl overdoses, especially in places like BC and Ontario, where you're getting young organs that are becoming available through a different type of tragedy. I think that finding better ways to provide organ donation is the real solution. If someone wishes their organs to be made available as they're undergoing MAID, I think that's one thing. But finding other pathways to make sure that vital organs are available for Canadians, there's better options than living MAID transplants.
And look, from a medical scientific perspective, of course, the fresher the organ, like the more life in the organ, the more valuable, the more transplantable it is. And I'm not denying the science there. That being said, look, we're right up against an ethical dilemma. And you mentioned an interesting point where, the government or, the organ donation community needs to ask, like, how can we be helping get organs in general? Does a story like this, and maybe I'll ask Aaron this, does this kind of story, this kind of journal article, does it help or does it cause people to take pause and maybe make them less likely to be an organ donor?
There needs to be exposure. So I do believe it's helpful. And I think if somebody is willing to undergo MAID and considering organ donation, they would have to have that option, of course, given to them. But the problem is, would it create a reverse incentive to perhaps incentivize undergoing MAID for the sake of organ donation? So we have to be careful how this has caused an ethical breach from the get-go. And it's ultimately challenging to solve ethical dilemmas that have been breached at the logical starting point. So by allowing MAID in the first place, which is I would say disregard for the sacredness of life, and of course, I would say even the fundamental freedoms of life. Anytime that is pressured upon someone, as has been well documented, we need to stop right then and there. These are just subsequent ethical catastrophes that are going to outcrop from already a logical shortcoming.
Okay, we're going to have to keep an eye on that story. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Counterpoint, as we're going to hit up the last topic. We're going to discuss the Gordie Howe Bridge. It's finally open. Traffic is flowing. Brock, it's been a long time coming. It included a negotiated deal between Prime Minister Carney and President Donald Trump. Okay, so first of all, like, it's opening to this fanfare. Are we happy about this?
We're glad it's finally open. It's been long in the making. They've been talking about it for decades. Stephen Harper and John Baird named the bridge, so that's how long ago the project's been underway. Construction started about 9 years ago. We finally got it open after a lot of resistance from the other bridge operator of the Ambassador Bridge that also connects Windsor and Detroit. We're seeing that Canada, with our elbows up Prime Minister and a bridge named after a hockey player known for his use of the elbows, has really put our elbows down. We're seeing that after the bridge is paid off, we're going to be giving a good chunk of the revenue from the toll of the bridge to the United States for letting us access their country. And I think that's the way things are going right now, that the U.S. under Donald Trump is renegotiating its place in the world so that it gets the best deal from the countries it interacts with. And as their next door neighbor, we're seeing a lot of this over the last few years, and we're struggling to figure out how to address it. And Mark Carney's approach is elbows down, give him some money, and see if this schoolyard bully doesn't take our lunch money tomorrow.
Yeah, I was shocked that deal got inked. I'll have a few comments on that in a moment, but I want your take first, Aaron. The bridge is open. A lot of controversy because there was that competing Ambassador Bridge, and of course, I'll use this term lightly, but the ethical scandal to me was that these were large donors, lobbyists of the Trump administration, and good for them. They used their money well. Their bridge, their bridge, yes, they didn't get to block the bridge, but they helped secure a good deal for the U.S. That's for sure.
Absolutely. This is what people don't understand. And Carney, I believe, would be fully aware of this. He is, former economic minister in Bank of England there. He has to understand we're already at $1 billion of interest, almost $1 billion of interest on top of the $6.4 billion cost that the federal government of Canada has funded. So allowing the Trump administration to relinquish 50% of the net profit for the first 15 years is just another loss and setback, because the original agreement was supposed to be 100% net revenue for the government of Canada to pay off the debt. And Harper knew this because he is, I believe, an economic major. You would not have even paid off the debt because he just was trying to get through the stalemate in the US government back in 2012 to get something approved to open up the expansive trade. So I think Carney is accepting this as a net loss. It is an objective net loss for the sake of increasing trade and the flow of traffic, but it's not a good deal. At the end of this 15 years, we will get back 100% of net revenue up until 50 years, but it's going to cost us about $15 to $20 billion for this bridge. So with the compounding interest, every year it's accumulating about $240 million in interest, and the bridge toll revenue only recuperates about 35 to 45 million. And then that's our half that we are taking. So it is a terrible deal out front, but I believe Carney sees it as a greater opportunity to increase the flow of traffic and thereby increase overall GDP by a few margins. So we'll see. It is definitely controversial. It's not a good deal. I don't think he should have caved in. I think it'd be cheaper to have allowed the bridge to sit even longer and wait for another administration to yield to its development. Yes, it might cost a few $1,000,000 to keep it maintained and not go derelict, but hundreds of $1,000,000 of interest not being recuperated is a huge loss.
Yeah, I'm with you. If I were advising Prime Minister Mark Carney, I would have said, just do nothing. In fact, use this as a bargaining chip for the Kuzma agreement. Do nothing,
Yeah.
let it sit. This is far too costly.
Yeah,
And to think that this will last for 50 years, like, we don't know. The next
the
administration could
agreement was already in
change the.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah, the agreement was already in place. It was already set deal, all sealed and
Yep.
done.
Under
So we could
President
have avoided
Obama.
the administration. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they should have just held out and done nothing and, dug your heels in, as they say. Keep your elbows up and then dig your heels in. Okay, we've got to run. Thank you both for joining me. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like us to suggest a topic for the show, feel free to reach out via X at T Granic Allen or via the News Forum website. This has been Counterpoint. Thanks for watching.